Responsive for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think my conclusion here today is that the damage that's been done to public health is going to take maybe generations to be repaired. When we think back, some of this stuff is so serious but seems almost laughable, with masks, testing the 2 miles long at the fairgrounds in Wisconsin, shutting down the schools, obviously, which was a travesty. Circles on the floor at Walmart for social distancing, and the furniture store next door was completely closed as a result of what became, known as the way we're going to handle this pandemic. So, I don't know if the boomer generation has failed again here for all society, but there certainly is a young group of adults that does not trust the government and certainly doesn't trust what we had forced upon them. And members of this committee, I remember being in Judiciary one day when we had members ratting out other members because their mask wasn't fully over their mouth and nose. I mean, it's stuff like that just, we're gonna look back on this and be very embarrassed. And unfortunately, I think public health is not going to come back from that. But I do have one question that's very specific to an actual age group who I think we completely threw to the wolves, it appears, and that is young men, young adults. And myocarditis has been brought up a couple times. And Dr. Kraus, can you talk specifically about why that population was affected by the vaccine so adversely? And do we have any idea what, boys going through puberty all the way to probably young men in their 20s, how they've been affected by this and how their hearts have been affected?
So myocarditis occurred most predominantly in the various studies in young men, as you say, age 16 and 17, but there were increased rates higher in men than in women, going up also to much older ages, although not as high as the youngest. So I don't know if it's necessarily a puberty issue, because this also affected people as they got older, but that was where we saw it most frequently. And the rates of myocarditis in these young men was quite high. In the early studies, it appeared to be around 1 in 5,000 vaccinees. We still don't understand why that was the case. What we luckily found was that most of these cases were mild, and yet there were some cases that were not mild. And of course, there were also some cases where, many cases where if one's diagnosed with myocarditis, of course, that changes a young man's life, because he'll probably then avoid being in sports and will still have some continued medical follow-up. So we don't understand it. It's most common after the second dose of vaccine. We found, luckily, that it did not appear to be as frequent as children got younger, and it also did not appear to occur with anywhere near as high a frequency with third and subsequent doses of vaccine. But it is a real finding that is associated with the vaccine. Luckily, in most people, when they get it, not severe, but certainly was enough to give us pause when we were evaluating the vaccine.
Well, and that's why in normal trials, Dr. Vaughn, I don't know if you want to comment on this. I mean, that's the type of population, a very specific niche population that might be identified when you're taking a full look at a vaccine, right?
Yeah, I think, again, a lot of what I have is just anecdotal stuff that we're continuing to do, but again, it's anecdotal on 2,000 people. It is an interesting thing to find out how hormones affect different things in regards to what the vessel can do. The other thing that we've seen to find is a lot of the patients with hypermobility are more likely to have, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome afterwards. And I think, again, that has to do with the vasculature being harmed by the spike protein in people that already have some vascular pliability.
Very good. Chairman, I'll yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Could I just add